Hi everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Future Work World. I'm Barry Winkless, head of the Future of Work Institute. Future Work World is CPL's podcast for the now and next of work. I'm really excited today to be joined by Jason Culloty, who is the CEO of skillsvista. Welcome, Jason.
Hey Barry, thanks for having me.
Great to have you here.
Yeah.
Jason, let's start with the question I always ask. Why skillsvista? How did you get from a career in the military to platforms enabling the skills-based organisation?
It's a question that's been asked of me an awful lot. I changed schools when I was 16. I'm a career guidance teacher. Her husband's married to a captain in the army, and that's the reason the cadets was ever put in front of me. And when I joined the cadets, most of my CEO choices were business related. So even though I was in the military, my mindset was always looking at kind of things strategically. My degree was in business, HR and industrial relations. So I was always focused in on like the learning development part, getting the most out of people. So that kind of, even though I was in the military, that was my mindset, which is kind of probably a little bit different to what people would, think someone would have in the military. And then in 2012, my dad passed away and I moved to Dublin for a kind of change of scenery. And I was one of two officers that was tasked with creating an upskilling plan for the whole Defence Forces on the back of the reorg we had in 2012. So like that was a very complex thing to do. And I remember at the time we were getting the data coming up from the various different levels. So you've 3 levels within the Defence Forces. And I had worked at the lowest level in the unit. Then I went into brigade for 3 or 4 months. And then I went up to Defence Force headquarters. So I was uniquely positioned to understand the data that should have been coming up. And some of the data that came up, I was going, okay, I don't think that's 100% right. And then I was like going, surely there's something on the market that if you click like training needs analysis or learning needs analysis, whatever you say it, you could get a consolidated overview in real time.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really see anything or find anything out there. And then in 2016, it's kind of part of, I suppose, a eureka moment. I was approached to run a consultancy company by 2 guys, and they were looking for someone with a HR background, learning development and project management. So I had a degree in business, HR. I had a certain learning development from the IPA, and I had managed numerous different projects in the military. So these 2 guys running a consultancy company understood the skills were transferable. So then I was like going, okay, can I take everything I've done and learned over time to the private sector? Yeah. And then I was thinking like, okay, let's see. I think people are people and process are processes no matter where you go. So within 3 weeks, I found myself managing a team of 35 consultants on site in Germany, putting in a learning management system. So I realized that, yes, skills are transferable, but then we were putting in an LMS, a learning management system for a medical device company, and it was just a box ticking exercise. Yeah. It was just, does Barry and Jason have X, Y, and Z, and next thing, tick the boxes. But it wasn't showing Barry how Barry could move to a role he was more passionate about, because we all go to college when we're like 18, 19, 20. We're still growing, we're still developing. So imagine if you had a system that allowed people to transition from one role to another. You then could put the best people in the best roles that are motivated to do it. So that showed me another part that there was a gap in the market for kind of like a skills-based system. And then we were dealing with a few different recruitment companies, not CPL obviously, and there was issues around the people that we were being recommended. So I don't think they understood the CVs because obviously it's very niche. And I said, again, if it was like skills based, they either have it or they don't. And it would be easier for everyone to understand who should be going into different roles. So on the back of experiencing all that, I decided to leave the Defence Forces and build skillsvista.
Good. So now you're here.
Now I'm here.
Look, we've obviously in the Future Work Institute do some work with organisations that are skills based or trying to get to on that journey, shall we say. I'm interested from your perspective. You've seen a lot at this stage, through your work with skillsvista. What does a skills-based organisation truly look like in actual practice? Because we hear a lot of buzzwords and there's a lot of stuff out there, and the reality, what we can see is probably there's still a number of organisations nowhere near this idea of a skills-based organisation. So from your perspective, Jason, what does it look like?
I would say very few are actually there, being totally honest. For me, what it looks like, it's basically giving the business agility by having the employees agile. So getting away from your traditional job description, roles and responsibilities. Like if you have a role and responsibility, how do you actually do that particular role? You need skills. You need experience to be able to do those activities. So what a skills-based organization will allow a company to do is you can change skills, you could change a job. So like as things evolve, you could remove maybe 20% of the skills and then connect in the new 20% directly in with strategic tasks.
Yeah.
So what it's doing is it's allowing a company to evolve, but obviously allowing the employees to evolve within that.
Yeah.
Like everyone's talking about AI and how it's impacting business. I was at an event there just before Christmas, and it's one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and they expect AI to impact about 20 or 30% of everyone's jobs. And I said, okay, well, what are you planning on doing? And the three global VPs just looked at each other, and I said, well, there's a number of options. You can either go down to a 3.5, 4-day working week, which isn't ideal for everyone, or you can remove those tasks. So the administrative tasks that now can be done by AI, you can then have 20, 30% of people at all levels directly connected in with your vision, your strategic objectives. But you need to be able to have a system that actually allows you or shows you how to do that, because we're asking managers, okay, first of all to manage, but then we're asking them to create training plans, learning plans.
Yeah.
They've no skill set in it. They've never been taught it or shown it. And the first thing is it probably creates frustration. It creates a lot of uneasiness in those people. But imagine if you had a system that immediately showed them who they have, the skills they have, how they can, support different projects. And as things are moving within their departments, they can immediately then be recommended courses and learning to be able to adjust their team and their department to make sure it can deliver for the business.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I just, I've done a lot of work in AI, obviously, myself, but there's a fundamental contradiction, seems to me, at work at the moment, which is from the roles I see being advertised. Obviously, we're a large recruitment and talent organization. Yeah. Those roles seem to be becoming more and more specific, right? So we want somebody from pharma, somebody with this particular skill set, somebody that's worked in this subsector of pharma. Yeah. So to me, there's a bit of a disconnect between, the aspirations of being a skills-based organization and the, more and more specific that these roles are becoming. So to me, it sounds there's a bit of a disconnect between, let's call it the executive leadership in organizations, I'm going to say being risk adverse, because they need to get the right people in the right role, ideally with all the exact, set of very applicable skills to get them going quickly, versus this dream of, well, actually, we're all bundles of skills,
potential.
Exactly, that if only people would realize. So I'm just interested in your perspective on that, Jason. What can we do to change that executive conversation? And, it's probably, I'm going to say it's metered risk, really, because if you've got 80% of the right skills that are applicable, you've come from the Defence Forces, you're an example of, applying these broad-based skills. What are we asking leadership to do? Because I think ultimately that's where this kind of stuff, it either swishes around for a while and becomes something, or becomes nothing.
It's a great question, Barry. And I think part of the problem so far has been technology wasn't as evolved as where it needed to be. Okay. When I was looking at building skillsvista 5.5 years ago, I was saying, this is where I want to go. This is my vision. It wasn't just for businesses. It was going to create something for industries, for governments, connecting the dots that have never been connected before. There's a lot of leaders in businesses that just don't know systems like skillsvista exist. There aren't many. And it's all about, if you don't know, you're going to do what you think is the best for you and your business. So until systems like us, skillsvista, were created, they didn't really have an alternative. Now they actually do, right? So your question is, it's right on point. I spoke at a data center event a year ago. There was about 4 or 5 of us on the panel. And the panel before us made a very interesting statement. They said that 15% of the people in the room were going to move to another company in the room, and 15% were going to move outside of the data center industry. Okay? So that's 30%. Right? If they don't look for talent outside of the data center industry, every one of them is competing for that 15%. So it's not 15% of the actual global talent workforce. It's 15% of a very small cohort. But imagine if they actually just said, okay, we don't need someone with these particular skills. There's 2 courses we can send them on. It's going to be 1 month and 2 weeks, 6 weeks. All of a sudden you can hire on talent. You can hire on attitude. You can hire on personality. And then you can train up the remaining 15, 20%. But the problem up until recently is, what does the 15 or 20% look like? And we're asking someone in a business at a line manager level that maybe doesn't know what that looks like, or we're basically asking the HR department if they don't have an L&D department, what does it look like? They're a HR specialist. They're not learning development
And
specialists.
it's a huge ask as well to
100%.
do that kind of work, right?
It is, but imagine if you had the system that actually does it for you.
Yeah.
So even like with likes of the CPL, if you're submitting candidates to your potential clients, imagine if you could actually submit a CV, and at the bottom of the CV was, if there was any skills gaps, the system would list the courses that were relevant for that particular person. That is a holistic solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're not pushing it onto the company or the line manager to try and work that out themselves. And I think that's what I mean by technology wasn't there. It is there now. And now it's about how we can actually connect those dots in a more meaningful way for all of the key stakeholders.
Yeah. I'm interested, let's talk about the Ireland and the EU context now, right? You know, so obviously big focus on the skills agenda in Ireland. You know, there's a lot of skill nets doing a lot of good work out there. You know, and to me, this idea of understanding skills, having a, you know, scalable platform to understand skills at a, not just an organizational level, but at a national and at a pan-European level. It seems to me, I'm going to say, a critical architecture to being, you know, fulfilling this dream, shall we say, of being this skills-based European economy that's so adaptable, we're consistently competitiveness. What's your take on that? So what role does and do platforms like skillsvista and others play in making that a reality? And if we don't make that a reality, what does that mean for countries like Ireland?
I feel it needs to become a reality. If we want to remain competitive and we want to make the whole learning journey as easy as possible for job seekers, employees, businesses and governments, there needs to be a holistic system. So during the week, I had a very quick look. There's a European Union employment service platform called EURES. They have over 2.7 million jobs advertised on it. It's like that for the last 5 years. It floats between like 2.6 and probably 4 million, right? Imagine if every one of us actually had a skills profile. So get rid of your CV, now it's a skills profile. And you can immediately see how you compare against any job within Europe, see your skills gap, and be recommended European government funded courses to bridge a particular skills gap. So you were right about mentioning the likes of SkillNets. So we launched a version of our system before Christmas with the biopharmaceutical SkillNet and Susan Costello and her team. Very innovative team. And with our system, they can click on training needs analysis and it can consolidate the skills gaps across 250 plus companies. They can list their training and the companies can basically click on a course, time of year and the number of employees they would like the course to be conducted. So now you're getting real-time data with regards to what industry needs. So imagine if that was taken up a level for SkillNet Ireland, that they can get a consolidated list of skills gaps across the 70 plus different skill nets. Now you're starting to make positive change, right? With our system, we've plugged in all the education training board courses. So there's thousands of those. We've all microcreds under one system. We've all Springboard Plus. We've all university courses, all on one central system. So for me, the next step, which is what we've always been building towards, is education merely for education's sake is wrong. Education should be directly connected in with labour market needs, right? From the Irish context, and then I'll go from the European Union context again. So every year we have about 80,000 students finishing third level, right? We've 60,000 students do their leaving cert, 40,000 go on to third level, but then there's 20,000. So 1/3 of students that do the leaving cert go where? They don't even probably know that the Education Training Board has thousands of courses that can give them a backdoor into university or can also give them enough, I suppose, knowledge to be able to get a better job in the open market. Because everything we do, in my mind, is to try and create a better life for ourselves and our potential future families. So that needs to work backwards from the labour market. So could you imagine if companies can advertise 6, 12, 18 months out, if they're building a new factory, they know what's going in there. But imagine if we had a system or a portal like skillsvista where you can advertise the jobs in the future. It means college students could major in an area that's more likely to lead to employment. That makes sense for me. And now you take that then up a level then from a European Union context. You're now connecting the dots in a way that they've never been connected before. But it's not just Europe. Like Singapore are massively looking at this, Australia, you know, the United States. This is a global problem, you know. And even if from an Irish context, you know, for years we were saying we're at full employment. I don't know how many people or how many of your audience know this, but we have a number, like we have a stat called economically inactive. It's over 21%. So there's over 21% of the actual workforce, people that could be working, that are just put into a group, and we push them to the side, and then we say, oh no, we're at 4 or 5% employment. And those people over here, they could be like, you know, minding someone, or they could be a carer, or they could have, you know, be at home minding the kids, but the kids now are going to school between 10 and 3. There's hours there. So like that could be 5 hours, that could be 25 hours a week that they could, you know, add massive value to small to medium enterprises or to businesses, which would obviously help grow the economy again. But we don't have a system that's connecting all of those various different dots.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I would say, you know, and again, anecdotal, because I haven't had to look at a lot of the research before today, but I've looked at a little bit of it. I would say that probably the ed tech style platforms are lagging behind a little bit in terms of their adoption by organizations. So it seems a bit strange to me. You know, given the rise of AI, the decomposition of, you know, roles into skills, some are going to be augmented, some are going to be automated, some will then rise to a higher level. That's the dream, shall we say. So what's your take on that? You know, you're right bang in the middle of this stuff, Jason. So I'm interested, is that right? You know, is it a little bit slower than we've done some of the other stuff we're putting in place? What's that?
I think it's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Learning management systems have a role to play.
Yeah.
But even if you actually have an LMS in a company, you still need to understand what course bridges a particular skills gap or is connected in with a learning path. Yeah. And that's a different way of looking at it. So that's the reason I built skillsvista, was I saw a gap between the HR systems and the LMS, which basically means that we need to make it easier for managers to understand their talent, the skills gaps that they have, and show them what courses. But also we need to make the career development piece an awful lot easier for people.
Make it as friction-free as possible with all this fantastic technology that we have, right?
100%. Yeah. So you asked the question is like about technology piece, but it's like what we're doing with technology is we're taking some of the information in some of the best minds and creating a system that gives us scale. And it's the scale piece that we're currently missing. Yeah. So I spoke to the previous CEO of Enterprise Ireland. We're an Enterprise Ireland client, and I showed him the system. I showed him the system supporting students to be able to pick the right course from regards to career guidance point of view. I showed him the job seekers versions of our system that can immediately show a person how their skills are transferable across different roles, different industries. If they have a skills gap, they're showing it, and the system can recommend the most cost-effective upskilling course to bridge your skills gap. I showed him the business version, and then I showed him the industry version. And he said, Jason, this is actually incredible. He said, this is the way it needs to be done. We need to connect the dots. However, within most ecosystems, if you're looking for, you know, if you're looking for funding, they'll say, oh, it's too big, it's too broad, it's too this, too that. Or even like initially when we were dealing with Enterprise Ireland, they were like going, it can't be a B2C system. It can't be going business directly to the consumer. But you're going, for us to make the real difference in what we're doing, it needs to be that system. It needs to be able to talk and communicate between each one. Like if we added a piece into skillsvista, so it basically it has thousands of roles preloaded with skills, and every skill has a description. But if we put a technology piece in, imagine if a company put in the types of technology using the different roles, and then as technology is evolving, the government could immediately know what roles, in what industries, in what geographic locations are going to be impacted, and then immediately contact the universities, training providers, the ETBs in those locations to either create the course or to update existing courses. And that's what I'm talking about here. It's the agility that's needed. So like with skillsvista, like down the line, you know, we could have like 1,000 civil engineer roles in our system. And AI can then tell us what skills have been removed across the 1,000, what skills have been added, and you could feed that information directly into colleges and training providers so that graduates that are skillsvista aligned are more in line with industry needs. That is a system that, to me, makes sense. Yeah.
I want to go all the way back to your Defence Forces career, if you don't mind.
Cool.
You know, you're in the middle of scaling up a business.
Yeah.
We're talking about skills transferability.
Yeah.
What did the Irish Defence Forces do for you as a leader, as an individual, to become the CEO of a scaling business today? Because that's right at the core of this conversation, right? So what are those bundles of skills that you have the Defence Forces to thank for that have gotten you to this point?
Super question. Every year the World Economic Forum kind of picks 10 skills.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they're around the problem solving, critical thinking side of things. The Defence Forces is a phenomenal environment where you get to test yourself. You get to test yourself as a leader, as a manager, as a decision maker, problem solver, etc. So I've been fortunate enough that over my 20 years in the military, I've developed those, I would say, to an extremely high level.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, then another key one I think is the resilience piece.
Yeah.
Like in the military, the mission is the mission.
Yeah.
This mission is that skillsvista is going to be a success. Yeah. So everything I've done over the last 5.5 years feeds into that.
Yeah. I can't imagine you being a shrinking violet now around the resilience piece.
I try not to, but it's funny. It's like when you talk about the military.
Yeah.
I was
going to say there's a Hollywood movie here somewhere.
There is. If I can only remember half of it, I'd say. But when you kind of like when you asked that question, I just was like thinking as well. I suppose in the background, but it's like I remember being in charge of a convoy going straight up through the centre of Africa, a resupply convoy, when I was stationed in Chad, and it was coming to the end of the wet season, so our armoured cars are extremely heavy, and we got some vehicles bogged. And next thing, like you jump out of the back and you're up to you're beyond your waist in muck and dirt. You're shoveling. You're basically clearing a path. Yeah. Like the stuff you take for granted. My last overseas trip, I was operations officer in Lebanon. You get a phone call at 1 o'clock in the night, and you basically take off running up to take over an operations room. Yeah. So you walk in, take a few deep breaths, and next thing immediately you start getting your briefs about, okay, tell me what happened. Okay, and then you basically start bringing in other people, and then you make your decisions around it. Yeah. So, like, it's those type of situations that you'll never experience in the private sector. Yeah. But it's about understanding, I suppose, the transferable skills part again. It's understanding, like, the Defence Forces help shape me. Yeah. But then how can I take that learning and bring it into the private sector to create something, like, something incredible, something that's never existed before? Because even if you look at the big companies, big tech companies, they're only kind of going after the business version. They're not connecting the dots from a full economy point of view. Yeah. Like the global economy has nothing like what we currently have connecting all of those dots.
Last question, Jason, and thanks very much for all your insights there. What's next for skillsvista? I know you've got an interesting project roadmap that you're currently getting developing the mission, shall we say? So what's next for you guys?
Next is to continue on, so basically we've the different sides of the system. So it's continuing to grow each of those different areas, continuing to listen to the clients and enhance the system so that it caters for as many people as possible in connecting those particular dots. It's a fine line. There's one or two companies probably in the space globally. One of them is probably very evasive. They take up your laptop, they scan all your information, your personal data, your emails, the whole lot, and they'll create a profile. We don't do that. We have thousands rolled, preloaded with skills. The company decides on what skills are relevant, and employees that want to engage can engage, but you're then simplifying the whole learning journey for them. So with regards to skillsvista, we've set up a UK entity. We're looking at expanding into the UK properly. We're looking at different locations and talking to people like in Birmingham, talking to people in Manchester. But look, we also have the system, so we can translate it into 55 different languages. It's primed to go global.
Jason, thanks very much. CEO of skillsvista. Definitely check the platform out. It's definitely worth the look. I've had a chance to play around with it as well. Jason, thanks very much indeed.
Super, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks to Jason, a fantastic interview, and I'm definitely more informed about all things skills-based organisation. That's the end of this episode of Future Work World. Please follow us on all good and popular channels. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.